Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. We're going to get started in a couple of minutes. To be early is to be on time. Timing of these doesn't work for everybody, especially maybe if you're on the West Coast, might be a little too early for you. But today we are talking about the ultimate retention and review formula. Everybody in this industry wants to talk about new students, enrollments, growth. And while that is one way to grow, it's not the only way. And depending on where you're at in your school, if you're just getting started, recruiting is typically the main focus and increasing the revenue. But once you have started to scale, the conversation now starts going around retention. Good morning, Miss Jilly. Nice to see you on here. And I always say that retention is the broccoli of business, but you should eat your broccoli. It's healthy for you. So we are going to talk all things retention and reviews and really just teach you the steps so you can shut the back door so you don't feel so overwhelmed with always needing new students, right? Like, why are we feeling this constant need to sign up 20, 30 students every single month? If we're feeling that, more than likely we have a retention issue. We are churning students. Our attrition levels are high. And we need to solve that because there is a cost to acquire new customers. It's not free, right? It's not just a cost. There's also time and energy and effort. And it's a lot more cost effective just to keep the customers you have a little bit longer. So we are going to talk about how you can shut that back door and some action steps that you can do right now, especially with it being the end of the year. This is really great timing for it. So we'll talk about the impact of attrition. I'm going to give you some actual examples just to really drive home this point. The top 4 recurring retention strategies. So there are so many different retention strategies that you can implement. If we try to do it all, we're typically going to fail. So let's hone in on the ones that are the most important. How to develop better retention through your events, how to set up a referral program that actually works, the number 1 Google review strategy, and it's probably not what you expect, and then how we can basically just improve our customer service and our retention through surveys, okay? So I know it's not the sexiest topic, but it's such an important part of the conversation. The VP of growth at Facebook, Alex Schultz, says retention is the single most important thing to grow. And Brian Balfour, who's a VP at HubSpot is a CRM. And he says if your retention is poor, nothing else matters. So as we approach the end of the year, hopefully you are analyzing your stats over the course of the year and you know whether or not you have a retention issue. So the number 1 question I get asked in the industry, our consultants get asked in the industry is, how do I get more students? And the question we should be asking is, how do I keep my students longer? And it's just not as cool, to be able to say oh, my students, stay with me for 48 months versus, oh, I signed up 25 new students this month. But there is a cost to acquire those students. And while the retention is the broccoli and the new students is the chocolate, we have to make sure we are putting efforts towards retention. Okay. I see more of you popping on. Please say hello because the giveaway for today, which I'm really excited that we're giving this away, is going to be based off of who comments. So even if it's just to say hi, let me know you are here. But we're going to do it based off of a raffle from people that comment. So go ahead, don't be shy. Let me know that you are here so I can enter you in that raffle. Miss Jilly, you are entered into the raffle. Always appreciate your engagement and your consistency with my trainings. Good morning, Miss Efferson. Nice to see you here again. Awesome. Miss Pickett, love it. All right, guys, keep them coming. So let's talk a little bit about the impact of attrition. And I just want to make sure we're all on the same kind of wavelength when we're talking about these keywords. So retention is the students that we keep, and churn or attrition are the students that we lose. Okay. So if you have a 97% retention rate, meaning you are keeping 97% of your students, then that means you have a 3% churn or attrition, that you are losing those 3%. Good morning, Mr. Miller. Good morning, Mr. Garcia. Nice to see you on here. So you need to be tracking this, and you should be tracking this on a monthly basis. And it's a very simple formula. You're just going to take the number of cancellations that you had in the month and then divide it by whatever your active count at the start of the month was. So let's say in the month of November, you lost 6 students, and your active count at the beginning of November on November 1st was 160. We would divide the 6 by the 160, and that's going to give us our churn or attrition. So you should be tracking this on a monthly basis. And I know, unfortunately, there are a lot of schools out there that have attrition rates that are in the double digits, like 10%. And I want you to think about that. If you are churning 10% of your student base, within 10 months, you would have gone through an entire student base. And just an improvement of 1%, 2%, 3% can make a drastic impact on your revenue. And when you think about why you want more new students, it's probably because you want to increase your revenue. Well, retention is another way that you can do that. So I want to kind of show this example of, let's say there's a school that each of them has 150 students, and let's say each student has a value of $185 a month. And then each school signs up 10 new students a month. So they're starting with the same amount, they have the same student value, and they each enroll 10 new students. But school A has a 7% attrition rate, and school B has a 4% attrition rate. If you do the math, school A ends up bringing in $330,000 for that year, but school B brings in $380,000. It's a $50,000 difference, which, I don't know about you, $50,000 is a lot of money just by lowering their attrition rate. And this is why this conversation is so important, and why it's so important that you are tracking this, because ideally you want to be at a 3% attrition. Like if you're at 3% churn, you're in a really, really good spot. The industry average is 5. I don't know about you. I don't want to be average in anything. So we want to aim for that 3. And if you are at 3, can you try to get it to 2 to 1? Yes, but it can have diminishing returns. So we really want to try to get it at a 3%. And if you are above 3, then this should be a major focus for you going into 2025. Good morning, Miss Ross. Nice to see you. So what are some things that we can do to improve our retention? Well, there are a lot of things that we can do, but here are 4 things that I would prioritize over the number one thing, which we're going to talk about in the next slide. So there is a number one thing that has to do with retention, but these are like actual strategies that you can implement. The first one is missing in action calls. Hopefully you are tracking attendance. And for those students that aren't showing up, one class turns into 2, which turns into a week, which turns into multiple weeks, which now turns into months. And that ultimately will end up to either a cancellation or a non-renewal. And non-renewals is where I see school owners get hit kind of the hardest with their attrition. So I think everybody knows we're supposed to be making missing in action calls, but is everybody doing it consistently? My Taekwondo school, this is back in the 90s before like CRMs were, even a thing. They had 2 boxes. All of the attendance cards were in box number 1 on Monday, the start of the week. You come to class, you grab your attendance card, they collect it, they mark it. and then they put your card in box number 2. So what ends up happening at the end of the week, all of the cards in box number 1, that meant those students did not attend class, and they would use box number 1 to make their missing in action calls. Now, most people nowadays, due to CRMs, are tracking digitally, and you can set up automations that automatically email them that they're out, but nothing is as strong as that human touch point. And if you wanted, instead of a call, to do a quick video message and send that out, that's just as impactful. The second thing you should be doing is You Are Awesome cards. One of the kind of game changers that we implemented in my school was utilizing a Google Calendar for all of the recurring and variable strategies that we needed to implement in the school. And I believe it's on the second Wednesday of every single month. That's when we do all of our handwritten postcards. So the You Are Awesome cards, the welcome cards for new students, the We Miss You cards for students that maybe canceled. And we have a specific day that the team sits down and we write all these out. So we'll write out all the You Are Awesome cards. A little ninja tip is in your CRM, you can give a tag to the person that you are writing the You Are Awesome cards. So now you can keep like a running list. So you're not sending the You Are Awesome cards, or you can call them good job cards as well. We call them You Are Awesome cards. You're not sending them out to the same students over and over again. Okay, so we should be doing that. Sniper chats. This is something that just costs a couple of minutes of your time after each class, and that's going up to the family and the student and providing feedback. And this, I understand, can be difficult, especially if you don't have a team, if you're a one-man or one-woman show. But if you're running back-to-back classes, it can make it a little bit more difficult. But even for me, like when I was starting and, I just had an assistant instructor, the assistant instructor could get the next class going with their bow-in and their warm-ups while I went and I did sniper chats with the parents and the kids. And these sniper chats, ideally positive feedback, but if we need to have, critiques given as well, there's that opportunity. And if you can do 2 or 3 sniper chats after every single class and you're running 5 classes a night, I mean, that's 15 one-on-one interactions that the instructor has with the family that really just levels up their feeling of being cared for. Okay. And it doesn't cost you any money to do this. Okay. And then for our quarterly appreciation calls, and this was actually a question I asked Mr. Mike Metzger if he had to pick only 3 things that he would want his team to do in order to help with retention. This was his number 1, which was reaching out on the phone so that it doesn't feel like every time we're picking up the phone and calling them, we're asking them to sign up for something or we're asking them for money. Okay. So all 4 of these have nominal costs, right? Really, the only one that has a monetary cost is the You Are Awesome cards. You got to print them and you got to mail them, but it's a nominal cost, right? Everything else is your time and your attention. Miss Ross says we're sitting at 3 to 4% currently. Like to be a steady 3. Love it. If they come to a second or third time that week, how do the students know which box to find their attendance card in? Yeah, you just train them so they know eventually. I mean, the first couple of times, but if you come your second, third, fourth class, then your card is going to be in box number 2. And then where do they put their card once they pull it a second or third? So we collect them in the beginning of class. So they grab their cards and then we collect them. And that's when the instructor will go ahead and mark the cards. They do that after class and then they put them back in the box. I'm not necessarily advocating for you to do physical attendance cards. We actually did physical attendance cards all the way up until 2020. And then because of COVID, we switched to digital. I personally like the tangible attendance cards. The Taekwondo school that Cruz trains at, he has it. And as a parent, I love seeing his progress and his classes marked off. But there are benefits to doing it digital, and you could do both. You could have the physical card. Many of the CRMs, you can scan the card and then it'll go into the CRM so that automations can trigger based off of number of classes or if they're not there. But it's just something to consider, right? And all the way back in the early 90s, the purpose of me explaining that box system was that they were doing MIA calls in there, right? And I know we're always looking for like the new, latest, and greatest thing to do, but old school operations and retention strategies still work as well. Chris, do you use a local printer and online supplier for the cards? We printed them locally. Yeah, we printed them locally. So we just made the graphic inside it. Back then, I mean, back in 2013, when I opened my school, Canva didn't even exist. So I created them in a Word document and got them printed. And then eventually we built them out in Canva. All right. So this is the most important retention strategy, guys. And it's what you're doing on the floor, right? It's your classes. And oftentimes as we start to scale, as maybe we're no longer the chief instructor and we're delegating this out, what happens on the floor can start to lose the same effect as if you were doing it in the beginning. Something really interesting on yesterday's Academy Intensive, I was going through the 5 drivers of business. And the first driver is your product and service, what you do. Next, you have marketing. Then you have sales. Then you have customer service. And then you have like admin and operations. And when I asked everybody out of those 5, which one did they need the most help with? And there's like 150 people on the call. Not one person said their product or service, which I'm sorry, but out of 150 people, there's got to be a handful of people that could use some improvement on the floor with what they are teaching. But I think it's just so interesting that all of us think that, our classes are the absolute best classes and, potentially kind of live in a bubble because you haven't seen what like really high level, next level classes can look like, which is why it's so important to join coaching companies like Maya so you can see that. But nothing is more important than the floor, okay? The service that you are offering. And this is why so many schools initially can grow so quickly with word of mouth. It's because the product and service that they are offering is so great, right? That is the number one retention strategy, is getting your clients results. If your students are getting results, they are more than likely not going to quit. And it's not just the service that we're doing on the floor. It's also how we are making our students feel, right? There's a famous Maya Angelou quote, like, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but nobody will ever forget how you made them feel. And again, as our schools start to grow, when we start going from 50 to hundreds and hundreds, I think Miss Jilly has like 500 plus students. Some of these things can start to deteriorate because there's just so many more missing pieces. So you want to make sure that everything that is happening on the floor is happening the way that it should be, and that we're making our students feel really, really great. Mr. Keffer, awesome. Nice to see you here. Love it. Okay. So we also can develop retention through events, right? Your students are going to be much less likely to quit if they have friends at the academy, right? Summertime in Florida, all the kids are outside, they're swimming in the pool, they're at the beach, they're going to Busch Gardens and Adventure Island, and 5 o'clock rolls around and it's time to go to karate class, and they don't want to go because they're having so much fun in the pool. Which, hey, I get it. As a kid, yeah, even as an adult, I'd probably rather chill out, by the pool as well. But when they have friends that are going to be at the academy as well, that basically creates a deeper connected community and will help with their show up rate to classes. But during your classes, you should be doing partner drills. You should be, making sure the children are introducing themselves to each other, even in your adult classes as well. But the time to really develop those relationships are either like before and after class, which I really don't want my students showing up an hour before class. Typically, we'll end up dealing with like behavioral problems. So when you do these events, it gives them an opportunity to create a deeper connected community with things like parent night out events, parent and child events, doing buddy events, hosting seminars, offsite events like potlucks and barbecues. My Taekwondo school that I grew up in, they did a canoe escape every single year. Is probably one of the most popular events that they did. And we all went down to this canoe place and they loaded us up in vans with a bunch of canoes and then they put you out into the Hillsborough River. And I just remember some of like my most fondest memories from being a kid was from the canoe escape. And then they also did this epic, like this huge potluck at one of these really nice parks, and everybody would come. And again, I still have memories from that and the friendships that I developed through those offsite events made me want to continue to go back to class, right? Doing things like appreciation nights, parent coaches orientation. If you're not doing something like this is something that is so easy to implement. We do this quarterly, and basically we invite any of the new students' parents that signed up for that quarter to come to this orientation. And we're basically reiterating a lot of what is in our new student handbook that we know most people don't even read. But what we're trying to do is develop a better relationship with the parent, give them tips and feedback, overcoming these objections of, oh, my child doesn't want to come, or what happens if we miss class, and really developing the relationship with the parent. And then we also use it as a profit generator because we'll do discounts on merchandise. But we want to have this time with these parents. And what it also does is all of the new parents that come to it, they get to meet each other. We introduce them to each other, and now they're developing friendships as well. So a parent coaches orientation doesn't cost you any money. Like I said, we did it once a quarter, and we invite all the new students that came that signed up during that quarter to it. I created a little keynote Canva presentation to just kind of give them the history of Gracie Pack, my background, information about our instructors, and it's just a really, really great retention event. Okay. And then you have your seasonal and holiday events, trunk or treats, holiday events, like a lot of our Maya clients just did this weekend. Okay. Miss Jilly says, it definitely gets harder when you grow. Things were so easy at 150, great at 250, got hectic at 350, and we're drowning at 600, pulling out our hair. Yeah, they got a lot of students. That is for sure. Next up, so we talked a lot about retention. Let's talk a little bit about referrals. You should have a referral program. It needs to be visual. It needs to be easy to use, and there needs to be a cool incentive. And out of all of this, the visual aspect is probably where a lot of schools drop the ball. They don't have like a referral program poster. They don't have a prize wheel that stays out. That is our recommendation for the referral program, is to use a prize wheel. You can get them off Amazon for like 30 or 40 bucks. We specifically put it in between the floor and the lobby so that the parents could see it and the kids could see it. And it's right where we do our end of class mat chat announcements. So when have students that have referred somebody that signed up during the mat chat, we have them stand up. Everybody starts a drum roll. We have them spin. And then there are certain times throughout the year where we'll do double referral rewards. So whatever it lands on, they can get 2 of it. Nothing's going to beat cash, guys. King is cash, but you can also do Amazon cards. You can also do, pro shop credits. If you don't have, a budget towards this particular thing, you could offer something like a free private lesson, but it needs to be visual. And this is a program that should just be continuous, right? It runs throughout the year, but then you can do different contests throughout the years as well. And some of the contests that we like to do around like the back to school season, if we're doing our anniversary party, is we actually use tickets. And if they bring a friend to a buddy class, then they get a ticket. If the friend signs up on a trial, they get more tickets. If the friend signs up, they get to do the ticket tornado. And then at the big event, whether it's the back to school bash, whether it's the anniversary party, we will do raffle contests for different items, from iPads to TVs to Wii's, Nintendo DS. We have other companies that will donate different gift baskets. We do the pie your instructor in the face. We can do, a multiple hour training on this. But what I just want you to make sure is that your referral program is visual. People need to be able to see it. Okay. Ms. Pickett, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. But that would be my recommendation, is using the prize wheel. And then whenever somebody enrolls, and you need to have VIP passes that your families can hand out to students. When a new student signs up and we give them their new student packet, we put those VIP passes in there. And, if you struggle with like making graphics for that, I would recommend checking out Maya Edge. It's a really great online resource that has all of this done for you. And they're all built in Canva. So if you want to edit them, you can do that. And then you can just print them out. Okay. But you need to have a referral program, guys. And this feeds into your retention, because when your students are training with their friends, they're going to want to continue coming so that they can deepen that relationship. I want to kind of shift to review strategy. And this is a newer strategy that we have implemented, and they're called NFC cards. And QRs work too, right? One of the things that came out of COVID was QR codes, right? And I don't know about you, but I get frustrated when I go to a restaurant and their menu is only online. It's like, man, I've been online all day. Just give me, a paper menu for me to look at. But what these NFC cards do is they're very easy to program, and there's a little chip inside of them. And basically what you do is you take your phone and you tap it to the NFC card. And then what happens is it automatically on the phone pulls up your Google Business profile to the reviews section so that somebody can leave a review. So having these throughout your school, where somebody can literally just take their phone and tap it, is a really great way to help increase your Google reviews, just having it in front of people. Now, before we used the NFCs, we had a big poster up on the wall that had a QR code that they could scan. That'll work just as well too. But these are kind of like a newer technology that you can be leveraging, and you can find these on Amazon. I've done, I think, 2 webinars on basically increasing your Google reviews. Ultimately, you want to be aiming for triple digits. If you get to triple digits, you're kind of in a league of your own. And what I want you to think of is like, how many lives have you changed over the course of operating your school? And if you've been around for a while, it's probably hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. And I would love your Google review number to kind of replicate the number of lives that you have changed. Okay. So these NFC cards work really, really well. But if you want to, I think I go over 20 different Google review strategies in a webinar. It's a completely free webinar. If you go to growproagency.com/webinars, all of my webinars that I've done one every single month, I think since the middle of 2019. So there's like over 50 plus webinars in there. And if you are interested in increasing the amount of Google reviews, then check that out. Okay. So the last thing I want to touch on, you should be developing a culture of feedback in your school, not just from your employees and your team members, but also from your students. And you can do this with 2 ways. Number one is our NPS scores. And what NPS stands for is a Net Promoter Score. And you've probably seen these before. Let's say you stay at a hotel and then you check out. And then the next day after you check out, you get an email and it asks you, how likely are you to recommend us to a friend? Or how likely are you to stay at this hotel again? And they give you like a 1 to 10, right? This is a very, very common feedback loop that major corporations use. And you can use this as well. And I know some of the CRMs out there, you can automate this so that, after a certain amount of classes, they get an email. Depending on what they rate you, you can send them to a Google review as well. But you should be getting feedback from your customers. A canceled customer has such great feedback that you should be listening to. And when people cancel, I hope you're asking them why. we have like a cancellation form that they have to fill out in order to process the cancellation, and it's digital. So, we're not trying to make it impossible for them to cancel. I don't think, that's right. I'm sure you guys have been paying for, a software and you want to cancel it and like you can't find the cancellation button. There's nowhere to cancel, right? They make it difficult. And that's not what I'm suggesting, but you should be figuring out why people are leaving because we want to solve for those problems. Okay. So consider some form of NPS scores that you can email out and asking people for feedback. And typically it's on a scale of like 1 to 5 or 1 to 10. And then another thing I would recommend doing, and this is good timing with it being the end of the year, is sending out an annual survey. There's a software called SurveyMonkey. It's completely free. It's a freemium platform. So like to send out the survey is free, but they do have like add-ons that, if you pay for, you get those features. But the free feature inside of SurveyMonkey will get the job done for you. And it's just 3 questions. What do you love about us? What do you like? What would you like to see improved? And then any new ideas that you'd like to share. And I held off on doing this for a really, really long time in my school because I didn't want anybody to call my baby ugly, right? Look at my business like my baby. And I didn't want anybody to say anything negative. And it's so silly. I think that often our identities are tied into our school and into our business. And, when somebody says something negative, it hurts, right? Because we really care about it. But you have to separate yourself. You have to look at yourself as like a board of directors. And if I was on a board of directors, I would want to know what my customers think about the services that I offer. So make this anonymous. And send it out. And what's really interesting is once we started doing this, we actually got more positive feedback in terms of what do you love about us versus what would you like to see improved or, what are you not happy with? And we also got some really good ideas. I'll remember one of the parents, she went on and on about all the things that she loved about us, but the one thing she wanted to see improved was the location of where our coffee stand was in our school. And it's like, you know what, we have limited space. That's unfortunately where the coffee stand is going to be. But, if maybe there were 20 people that had an issue with where the coffee stand is, well, maybe we need to consider moving it. And we call that a green tail. And what I mean by green tail is if I'm walking around and somebody says, Chris, why are you wearing a green tail? I'd be like, what is this person talking about? And then I'm walking around and a second person says, Chris, why are you wearing a green tail? I'd be like, what is wrong with these people? And then a third person says, why are you wearing a green tail? What do you think I'm going to do? I'm going to look behind me and I'm going to see if there's a green tail. And we need to find those green tails in our business. If multiple people are saying the same things in areas that they would like to see improved or ideas that they would like to share, then that's something that you should consider developing in the new year. Okay, so your action step is to set up your end of the year survey and send it out. And how often would you do the NPS score? Yeah, so the Net Promoter Score is something that, maybe a few times a year. It's not something you should be asking after every single class. I would think of like milestones that your students go through. So maybe after they get their first rank, potentially after an upgrade nomination occurs, things like that. At GrowPro, we actually send these out bi-monthly, and we use a color coding system, purple, green, orange, and red, asking feedback for clients that way. But in the school itself, if you're building that, I would think of the milestones, maybe a certain amount of classes, earning rank, doing, the upgrade nomination, maybe you have a leadership program and things like that. So asking for feedback at the different stages that your customers are in is really important because the feedback from a brand new family probably going to be different than somebody that might have been there for 3 or 4 years. Okay, great question. Okay. Yeah, you can build out the NFC card for anything, which is pretty cool. So awesome. All right. Any other questions, guys? That is your homework, action steps. Talk to you soon.